They were raising a chimpanzee as their child, and then the unthinkable happened. This is the disturbing case of Travis the chimp. Sandy and Jerry were a successful married couple and very well off financially. After a playful encounter with a chimpanzee at a rodeo, Sandy became obsessed with the idea of owning one herself. Sandy and Jerry found a breeder of chimpanzees in Missouri and bought Travis when he was only 3 days old. Travis's mother had to be tranquilized so they could go in and steal Travis from her, which I'm sure was really devastating and traumatic. Chimpanzees are actually our closest relative, and we share about 98% of the same DNA. Sandy and Jerry bought Travis for $50,000 and weren't even legally required to have a permit to keep him as a pet. They actually didn't even see Travis as a pet. They raised him like a son. That was their baby. Travis was an adorable little baby. He went with them everywhere they went. He was also a really smart little chimp. He learned how to ride a bike, mow the lawn, and even drive a car. By all accounts, Travis fit in quite nicely with the human society he was being raised in. Travis loved to watch TV. He loved watching sports. He ate candy and ice cream and drank wine with his dad nearly every night. Travis even went to restaurants with Sandy and Jerry. Travis was a local celebrity in this town. Everyone knew Travis and loved him. As Travis got older and stronger, he began to act out more and cause more issues. But it was always overlooked because Travis was always so playful and lovable. They never thought he would actually hurt someone. Jerry got really sick and had to be hospitalized, and he told his wife if anything ever happened to him to put Travis in a sanctuary because he was too much for her to handle alone. Jerry unfortunately did end up passing away, and his wife Sandy did end up finding a chimp sanctuary in Florida. She wrote them a really loving letter asking if they had space for Travis. She included family photos and a donation check. She signed the letter, sealed it, stamped it, but she actually never ended up sending that letter. I think in Sandy's mind, she knew that keeping Travis was wrong, but in her heart, she couldn't let go. After losing her husband, Sandy became depressed and detached. Travis was really all she had left. And Sandy wasn't the only one affected by Jerry's death. It left Travis extremely depressed. Chimpanzees are really complex, emotional creatures. Travis was smart, but he couldn't understand why his best buddy, the guy that he drank wine with and cheered watching baseball with, was here one day and gone the next. Travis was actually so depressed that a local doctor gave him Xanax. And then on February 16th, 2009, the life of Travis the chimp took a dark turn. That day, Travis was agitated and not listening to anything Sandy said. He was outside the home and refusing to go back inside. So Sandy ended up calling her best friend of 30 years, Charla Nash, for help controlling Travis. Charla agreed to come over and help Sandy with her chimp. Charla had known Travis since he was a baby, but she had recently dyed her hair and looked a little bit different than maybe Travis remembered. So when Charla got to the home and exited the car with one of Travis's favorite toys, he charged her and began to attack her. Travis was 13 years old at this point and over 240 pounds and believed to have the strength of 5 adult men. Travis began to rip Charla apart, blood everywhere. Sandy did her best to save her friend, but Travis was not listening to her. So she called 911 for help. I'm gonna put in a clip of that 911 call. It is so scary. You can hear Travis in the background.
Onwards for emergency.
Oh, this is Sandy. 231 Rock River Road.
What's the problem?
Send the police. Send the police.
What's the problem there?
The chimp killed my friend.
What's the problem with your friend?
Oh, please.
What's the problem with your friend? I need to know.
Send the police up with a gun. With a gun.
Who has a gun?
When the police arrived, they were forced to unalive Travis. Charla was miraculously still alive, but her hands and her face were nearly completely gone and she had lost over half of the blood in her body. That day, Charla was in surgery for hours. There's some photos available online of what she looked like, but personally, I don't feel comfortable sharing them. It was a brutal scene. Even the hospital staff that was treating her needed counseling afterwards. Eventually, Charla had a face transplant, and compared to how she looked after the attack, it's incredible how good she looked after the transplant. She had a young daughter at the time in her care that had to end up living with a friend because she was in treatment for so long. Today, she's permanently blind, but she is so incredibly strong and a huge voice and activist against keeping wild animals as pets. Travis's owner, Sandy, passed away about a year later, and her estate awarded Charla over $4 million in damages. I feel so terrible for Charla, but I honestly also feel really bad for Travis as well, because he should have never been kept as a pet in the first place. I wanted to share this case today to bring awareness to how dangerous, irresponsible, and honestly cruel keeping wild animals as pets is. I know there's a lot of people on this app specifically that share their exotic pets. I'm not coming for any individual. I'm just saying personally, I think it's wrong. If you do feel differently, let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this entire case if you'd want to see similar stories in the future. If you watched the end of this video, thank you so much. Let me know in the comments that you saw this. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video. This teacher essayed multiple of her students until she got pregnant. For a while, Rebecca Joins from the UK was living like her best life. She graduated university, got this really nice apartment with a long-term boyfriend. The two had actually been together since she was 15, and for a while, they had the perfect relationship. Rebecca had also recently gotten her dream job as a high school math teacher, so you know, things were looking really good. But after 9 years of dating her long-term boyfriend, Rebecca became really controlling, possessive, and jealous. She was always accusing her boyfriend of cheating, and after a while, he broke up with her and moved out, which was really devastating for Rebecca. And pretty much right when that happened, the 2020 lockdown started, so classes were moved online and Rebecca was completely alone. But in September of 2021, Rebecca was 27 years old, and that school year started with classes back in school. Rebecca was teaching math to 14 and 15-year-olds, and you know, she's a younger teacher, and I guess some people would find her attractive, and she started getting a lot of attention from her students, these teenage boys. These 14 and 15-year-old boys were constantly flirting with Rebecca, and you know, she was lonely and single, so the 27-year-old Rebecca really liked the attention. But instead of being the responsible teacher, you know, like the adult in this situation, Rebecca really entertained this inappropriate behavior. And there was this one 15-year-old boy in particular that was especially flirty towards Rebecca, and all the victims in this case identities have been protected, so we're just gonna refer to him as Boy A. And after only being his teacher for 5 weeks, Rebecca gave Boy A her phone number. That was on October 11th, which was a Monday. The two were constantly flirting through texts. It was really suggestive. And by that Friday, so only 5 days later, 27-year-old Rebecca and 15-year-old Boy A went on their first date. Boy A told his mom that he was going to be spending the night at his friend's house, and him and Rebecca went to the mall for their first date. At the mall, Rebecca bought Boy A 345-pound Gucci belt, which is like $440 in the United States. And buying victims really expensive gifts is a tactic that predators often use. After the mall, Rebecca and Boy A went back to Rebecca's apartment, and on the way, the two of them actually joked about how Boy A wasn't even old enough to drive yet. Like, yuck. Back at the apartment, Rebecca statutory SA'd Boy A multiple times. She actually lied to him and said that she was infertile and couldn't get pregnant, so the two of them didn't use protection. And this is just so wrong and illegal on so many levels. The age of consent is 18. Rebecca is Boy A's teacher. She's only known him for a couple of weeks, and this was boy A's first time ever. And like teenage boys do over that weekend, boy A told all of his friends about what he did with Miss Joins. So by Monday, rumors had spread across the entire school, which of course were not rumors, and very quickly, CPS, the police, and the school were all notified. Boy A confessed to everything, and he said it honestly made him really, really uncomfortable, but he was trying to act like he was cool and mature, but he's only 15. Rebecca was arrested. She was suspended as her position as a teacher. She was let out on bail pending an investigation and a trial, with the condition that she was not allowed to have any contact with anyone under the age of 18. Unfortunately, boy A is not the only victim in this case. So now we have to talk about boy B. Boy B was another 15-year-old boy in Rebecca's math class, and before being arrested, Rebecca added boy B on Snap. And while she was out on bail for the same crime, Rebecca was sending flirty and suggestive messages to boy B as well as inappropriate photos. And by the beginning of November, Rebecca invited boy B over to her apartment for the first time. This is her second victim in less than 1 month, and she's already gotten caught once. First time that boy B came over, Rebecca did assault him, but they didn't go all the way because Rebecca wanted to wait until boy B turned 16, which was only a couple weeks away, but like that would make it any better. And as soon as he turned 16, Rebecca statutory essayed boy B, and this was also his first time ever, and the two would then be in a relationship for over a year. Just like with her ex-boyfriend, Rebecca became super obsessive and controlling and possessive and jealous over boy B. She wanted all of his passwords. She would always go through his phone. She would make boy B FaceTime her to prove that he wasn't with other girls. She also wanted boy B's location, and if he wouldn't text her back fast enough, Rebecca would just show up to wherever he was. So now she's stalking this teenage boy. And when boy B tried to break up with Rebecca, she threatened to unalive herself, which is like another tactic that abusers and manipulators use. But Rebecca is 28 years old now. She's almost 30, and this is what she's doing to a teenager. And then in March of 2023, Rebecca had been abusing boy B for 18 months. She told him to come over to her apartment because she had a surprise for him. When he came over, she had a scavenger hunt set up for him all throughout her apartment, which ended with boy B finding a baby onesie that said, "I love you, daddy" on it. And this is so confusing because did she forget that he's a teenage boy? Like, this is something you would do if you and your husband had been trying for a baby for a while. And also, Rebecca had also told boy B that she was infertile and couldn't get pregnant, which obviously wasn't true, but then they never used any protection. It's like this was something she planned so she could trap this teenage boy. But luckily, I think this was enough for boy B to realize that he was so over his head that he went home and he told his parents everything, which I'm sure was really, really difficult for him to do. I mean, he's a teenage boy. He has to say that he's been sleeping with his adult teacher and now he's gotten her pregnant. So I really, really applaud his bravery for feeling like he can go to his parents. But Rebecca was arrested again. And in January of 2024, she gave birth in prison to boy B's baby, and boy B and his family have full custody of that baby. Rebecca's trial began in May of 2024, and she really tried to act like she was the victim. Every single day into court, she would bring this like little baby hat. You can see in this photo, she has it tucked into her pants for some reason. And sadly, some people don't see men as victims, especially of SA, even if they're teenagers. So the prosecution asked the jury to imagine how they would feel if this was a male adult teacher on trial and he had essayed two 15-year-old girls and had gotten one of them pregnant, because there is no difference. Rebecca was found guilty on all charges, but sadly, she was only sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, meaning she'll get out of prison by the time she's in her mid-30s. And I truly think that Rebecca is a dangerous predator and will likely reoffend. And also, when Rebecca is released from prison, she will get visitation of boy B's baby, which I don't agree with at all. I definitely think if she was a man and the roles were reversed, that would not be the case. But luckily, when Rebecca is released from prison, she will be on the registered SA offender list for the rest of her life. And if you watched to the end of this video, thank you so much. It would mean so much to me if you shared this video. I don't want Rebecca to get out of prison thinking that she can just live her life as normal. I want as many people as possible to know this monster's face. He says he has a surprise for them, and then he goes and grabs a hatchet. This has to be one of the saddest cases I've ever looked into, an absolutely horrific tragedy. Technically an unsolved case, but I'm pretty sure we all know what happened, and at the center of all of it is this evil SOB. People compare him to Chris Watts, but he's like the Chris Watts before Chris Watts. Josh Powell did not have a good childhood. His dad, Steven, was really abusive, and his dad would show him like inappropriate movies when he was a little boy, and I know you know what I mean. Josh was very unwell and angry when he was a little boy, and at one point he actually tried to attack his mom with a butcher knife just because she asked him to do the dishes. Josh met Susan through the Mormon church. The two of them quickly got married. It was very fast. Then the two of them moved to Utah, where they had 2 sons, Charlie and Braden, and it really seemed like they had this beautiful, happy, perfect life and family. Susan would confide in her friends that her husband Josh was very controlling and abusive. He was very threatening any single time she said that she wanted to leave him. They were also in a terrible financial situation, mainly because Josh was racking up a lot of debt, and then he had to file for bankruptcy. Susan records this really, really chilling video, like she knew something bad was gonna happen, where she walks around her house kind of showing off all of their belongings.
This is me, July 29th, 2008. It is 12:33 Mountain Time. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
Very sad to watch that tape, knowing what ultimately ends up happening to her. Because on December 7th, 2009, Susan disappeared. That day, she never showed up to take her 2 sons to daycare, and since that was so odd, the daycare actually called their emergency contact, which was Josh's sister, to go see if everything was okay. When Josh's sister got to the house, she was knocking on the door, calling them, but no one was answering, so she called the police. Everyone had this gut feeling like something terrible was wrong, so they actually knocked down the door, and inside, no one was home. The entire family was missing, but Susan's phone, her purse, all her belongings were still in the house. And then probably the most chilling of it all, 2 large fans were pointed at the carpet and trying to dry this part of the carpet, which looked like it was recently washed. Like it was trying to dry the carpet really, really fast, which was so suspicious. And then Josh and his 2 sons just showed up, and Josh tried to claim that he had no idea that his wife was missing. Josh claimed that the night before, around midnight, he took his 4-year-old and 2-year-old son on a spontaneous camping trip, and his wife did not join them. So he's really claiming that he went on a spontaneous camping trip in the middle of the night. It was after midnight with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old in December, when it was freezing cold temperatures and it's like pitch black in the Utah wilderness at night. It's freezing during the summer, but you're doing this in December, and that just so happened to be the day that your wife disappeared. There was no clue where Susan was and no evidence that linked Josh to her disappearance, but people were definitely suspicious of him, and even more suspicious after his wife Susan was only missing for 1 month. Josh just packed up with his sons and moved all the way to Washington to go live with his dad, Steven. This is so bizarre. Your wife has been missing for only a couple weeks and you're moving states with her children. Don't you think you'd want to be there in case your wife comes home, or maybe help in the search to find her? Josh Powell was already guilty in the court of public opinion, and then him and his father Steven started to say some really disgusting things about Susan in the media, just absolutely running her name through the dirt. Josh's dad Steven even tried to claim that Susan would come on to him, which absolutely was not true, because Susan would tell everyone that she actually got the creeps from her husband's father, and for good reason. Susan's 2 sons, who were only 4 and 2 years old when she disappeared, started to say some really disturbing things. Charlie would just blatantly say that his mother was dead, and then Braden drew a family photo which had him, his brother, and his dad in their family minivan, and when someone asked him where his mom was, he said that mommy was in the trunk. The police actually did a search on the home that Josh was living in with his sons and his dad, and the police found some really, really disturbing things. Very, very, very creepy. Josh's dad had over 4,000 photos of Susan that were taken without her realizing. The police also confiscated 3 computers, and I don't even want to know what they found on them, but afterwards, Josh's dad, Steven, was arrested for having like bad photos of children, as well as for watching someone without their permission. He served 7 years in prison for this, was released in 2017, and then passed away in 2018. But afterwards, Charlie and Brayden were removed from Josh's custody and put in the custody of Susan's parents. Josh was offered supervised visitation if he agreed to move out of his father's home, which ended up being a terrible, tragic mistake. Josh did end up making that move. He moved out of his dad's house, got his own place, but Josh was not happy with supervised visitation. He wanted full custody of his kids, but Josh was denied full custody after a court hearing where they found that Josh was drawing some disturbing cartoons. Don't even want to know what those were. It was recommended that Josh get an evaluation, but in the meantime, he was still allowed to have supervised visits of his 2 sons with a caseworker present. But after that court hearing, Josh started to plan something terrible. He bought a bunch of gasoline, he donated all of his son's toys to a thrift store, and then he sent goodbye and apology emails to all of his family members. On February 5th, 2012, Josh had a scheduled visit with his 2 sons, but reportedly, Charlie and Brayden did not want to go to their dad's house that day, but they had to. A caseworker named Elizabeth picked the 2 boys up from Susan's parents' house and drove them to their father's house. And when they got there, the 2 boys just hopped out of the car and they ran up to their dad. But before the caseworker could catch up to them, Josh slammed the door in her face and locked it. Caseworker Elizabeth starts freaking out. She says that she never had anything like this happen to her ever. She's knocking on the door, she's begging Josh to open it, and then she hears Josh say, "Charlie, I have a big surprise for you." And then afterwards, she said she could hear the boys crying and screaming. And we now know that's because their father, Josh, was attacking them with a hatchet. Caseworker Elizabeth then starts to smell an overwhelming smell of gasoline, so she goes and she calls 911, and I have to say, the 911 operator on this call makes me so mad. He sounds like such a jerk. He sounds annoyed that Elizabeth is even calling. Elizabeth is telling the 911 operator that she's really scared for these 2 young boys' lives, and she's asking, when are the police gonna get here? And the 911 operator, in like a really gross tone, tells her that he doesn't know, and they're gonna respond to emergency and life-threatening situations first. This is someone that doesn't have custody of children, and they've locked themselves away with these children. The children are crying and screaming, you don't know why, and now you smell gasoline and you don't think that's an emergency. But tragically, it would just be too late, because then Josh's house exploded. It burst into flames and there were no survivors. Josh passed away, but so did 7-year-old Charlie and 5-year-old Brayden. Hatred I feel for Josh is unbelievable. I don't think I've actually hated anyone so badly. He's such a coward. Like, what a pathetic excuse for a man. Like, if you want to go out like that and you want to do that, fine, whatever. I don't care. You probably killed your wife. But to take the boys' lives that way too, it makes me actually so sick. Every single time I hear about this case, I start to cry. Every single time. And to this day, Susan Powell has never been found, but it is believed strongly that her husband Josh took her life as well. And if you watched the end of this, thank you so much for listening to Susan, Brayden, and Charlie's stories. It means the world to me that you guys have been here at all. Love you guys so much. I hope I'm here with you guys tomorrow. But if I'm not, I hope you guys have been looking at this, because this has been on the screen the whole time, and go find me there. The teacher that married her 2nd grade student. Mary Kay Letourneau was a married mother of 4 when she first met Billy Furlow. She was a teacher at Sherwood Elementary School, and Billy was an 8-year-old in her 2nd grade class. All of Mary Kay's students loved her because she was pretty and sweet and blonde. Mary Kay said that since the moment she met Billy, remember when he was only 8 years old, she knew that he was special and that they kept in contact over the years. Then in 1995, Billy was Mary Kay's student once again. Mrs. Letourneau was 34 years old now and teaching 6th grade. Billy was 12 years old now and in her 6th grade class. Something that I don't think is brought up enough is that Billy was only a year older than Mary Kay's oldest son. Billy was Mary Kay's favorite student. She would invite him over all the time throughout the school year to hang out with her family and play with her kids. They were spending a lot of time together, and Billy was developing quite a serious crush on his teacher. Mary Kay would say that he came on to her first and was pursuing her very hard. But I need to make something very, very clear, and I cannot stress this enough. It is normal for a child to have a crush on their teacher. It is not normal, and it's disgusting for those feelings to be reciprocated. And as the adult in the situation, Mary Kay should have known what was appropriate and put an end to it. But just to further prove how much of a 12-year-old boy Billy was at this point, he had a $20 bet with another student that he could make Mrs. Letourneau sleep with him. And when 6th grade let out for the summer, Mary Kay started statutory essaying Billy. And by the end of summer, Mary Kay was pregnant with Billy's child. I just cannot stress this enough to you guys. She's almost 35 and he is 12 years old. And that she's married already with 4 kids, one of whom is extremely close in age to Billy. Well, Mary Kay's husband finds out about what's happening, and one of his relatives actually called and reported the abuse, and Mary Kay was arrested for the first time. Mary Kay, who is very pregnant by now, said that she didn't know that what she was doing was a felony. And Billy continued to support her throughout the entire trial. He said that he was not a victim, what they did was completely consensual, and that they were in love. Mary Kay's husband was awarded a divorce and also full custody of their children, and I don't know if she ever saw her first 4 children ever again. Mary Kay gave birth to her and Billy's first daughter while awaiting sentencing and was sentenced to about 80 days in prison. Following Mary Kay's release, she was given a no-contact order, so she was unable to have any contact of any minor, which included all of her children and Billy. But of course, she quickly broke that no contact order. Her and Billy started seeing each other pretty much almost immediately, but they were quickly caught and she was arrested again. This time she was put on the registered SA offender list. But by the time that she was caught, she was already pregnant with Billy's 2nd child. This time around, she was sentenced to over 7 years in prison and gave birth to her and Billy's 2nd daughter while in jail. Both of those babies were put in the custody of Billy's mom, by the way. By the time that Mary Kay was released the 2nd time, Billy was 21 years old and he filed to have the no contact order overturned, which was granted by a judge. So him and Mary Kay got married then. He was 22 years old and Mary Kay was 43. They were married for about 12 years before Billy filed for a legal separation, but the two were never able to actually get legally divorced because Mary Kay got really sick and ended up passing away in 2020 at the age of 58 years old. Since Mary Kay's passing, Billy has done a lot of TV interviews and it seems like he's finally come to terms with the fact that he was a victim. He says quite often that if he was attracted to a 12-year-old while he was in his 30s, he would seek professional help and that would be extremely disturbing. He also says that if either of his daughters ever said that they were dating their teacher, that he would report it and it would be gross. I really feel for Billy. I mean, Mary Kay, through the abuse, ruined his teenage years, his 20s, his 30s, really all the best years of his life. I mean, he was a father 2 times over by the age of 14. That is some serious trauma, and I hope he has a lot of support. As for Mary Kay, I think that she is a narcissist who became fixated on a victim and refused to let go. It also seems like she convinced herself that the two were star-crossed lovers and that she was doing nothing wrong. She actually never ever admitted to doing anything wrong because they were in love. Up until the day she died, she put all the blame on Billy, who, remember, was only 8 years old by the time they met. And she honestly had a lot of supporters who believed her when she said that the two were soulmates, which is so freaky and disgusting. And you know, if the genders were reversed, it would be a completely different story. Well, that's all I have today. I know this was long. You guys have been asking me for some longer videos, so I decided to give it a shot. If you liked it, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. But if you did watch to the end, thank you so much. Leave a pink heart in the comments so I know that you saw this. So chances are you've already seen this clip. I've been asked to talk about this almost every single day, and this is probably one of the most shocking, horrific, and disturbing cases that happened in the last handful of years.
Okay, so parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Well, the man in that clip is 19-year-old Brian Cohey Jr., and his mom just found a severed human head in his closet. This case takes us to Grand Junction, Colorado. At a very young age, Brian was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. He was always getting in trouble at school because he would always say really inappropriate things. He had this like dark, edgy humor, and he was always picking fights with his classmates. Brian's teachers would openly talk about that if any student was ever going to bring a weapon into school, that it would be him. During Brian's junior year of high school, his parents were told that the other students did not feel safe around him. In 2018, he was arrested for assaulting another classmate with homemade mace. And in 2019, he was suspended twice, once for saying some really inappropriate things to some female classmates, and another time for inciting a panic attack in another student that Brian knew was suffering with PTSD. Brian also had an obsession with everything dark, disturbing, and morbid, especially serial killers, and especially Jeffrey Dahmer. Brian's parents were also told by his doctor that he should be evaluated because he potentially had some kind of psychosis. But as far as I know, his parents never actually had him evaluated. And then on the evening of February 28th, 2021, Brian accidentally drove his car into the Colorado River, and for help he called his parents, who called the police. Brian told the police that he parked his car at the boat ramp because he was trying to sit there and like think and clear his head, but his car accidentally rolled into the river. Brian went home, but his parents stayed behind as the tow truck pulled the car out of the river, and this is where things get a little suspicious. There appeared to be something that looked like blood on the back of the car, and in Brian's car was a wallet that did not belong to Brian. And when his parents asked him about this, he said he had no idea anything about the blood, he had no idea what they were talking about, but the wallet he actually found at the river that night, and he took it because he was going to try and return it. And that wallet belonged to this homeless man named Warren Barnes, and the very next day Warren would be reported missing. Warren may not have had a home, but he was a well-known and well-liked man in his community. All the local businesses knew and loved Warren. He would always do like odd jobs for all the local businesses in the community, and in return the local business owners would give him food, water, shelter, and money sometimes. Warren was also a creature of habit. He did the exact same thing every day. So a day wouldn't go by that like all his friends at these local businesses wouldn't see him. People would also always see him sitting on the sidewalk reading a book because Warren loved to read. People actually would call him the reading man if they didn't know his name. So when no one had seen Warren for about 36 hours, everyone was immediately concerned. And it was actually this woman named Monique who owned a local bridal shop in town that was the one that reported him missing. And in the meantime, Brian Cohey's parents were getting more and more suspicious of their son. First, there was blood on his car that he had no explanation for. Then they found a wallet in his car that belonged to a man that has now been reported missing. So after Brian left, his mother actually went to his room to like snoop around, and I don't know what she was expecting to find, but I doubt she was ever expecting to find a human head in her 19-year-old son's closet. Brian's parents immediately called him, have him come home. They called the police, and when the police talked to Brian, he doesn't try to hide what he did at all. He immediately confesses. Brian told the police that for a really long time he wanted to know what it would be like to kill someone. He thought that it would be the greatest feeling in the entire world, and he was often driving around at night looking for a potential victim, and that's what he was doing on February 27th when he saw Warren Barnes sleeping under the local bridge. So Brian says he pulled over, he put on a Michael Myers mask, and then attacked Warren as he slept with a sharp weapon. It was an awful, brutal attack, and Warren never saw it coming. And then afterwards, Brian took Warren's head and hands, loaded the rest of his body in his car so he could take it to the Colorado River and dump it in the river. But as he was doing that, his car accidentally rolled into the river, and you know the rest of the story. During Brian's interrogation, he acted very calm. He acted like he had no remorse, no guilt, nothing. He spoke about what he did in great detail without a care in the world, like it was any other day. Like he was telling you about what he did over the weekend. And he even said something along the lines of, why should I care? I killed someone, I got caught, what, I'm gonna get like 15 years in prison? Brian also told the police that he wanted a homeless victim because he did not think that they would be missed and they would not be reported missing, and that could not be farther from the truth. 69-year-old Warren Barnes was reported missing less than 2 days after he was killed, and his death devastated his community. His loss was felt by so many people, and his community actually came together to create a memorial for Warren, and that memorial can be found outside of Monique's bridal shop, who was the woman that actually reported him missing. At Brian's trial, he pled not guilty by reason of insanity, but he was found guilty of all charges, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and still he showed like no emotion, no remorse, no guilt at all. He only felt bad for himself, saying, "This sucks because now I can't hang out with my friends, I can't play video games, and I can't go on the internet anymore." If you watched to end this video, like always, thank you guys so much, and thank you for listening to Warren Barnes' story. Let me know if you'd ever heard this case before, if you had seen that clip. In the comments, let me know what case you want to see me cover next. And until then, love you guys so much. I hope you guys have such a great rest of your weekend, and go Chiefs. The last thing she ever said to her family was that her boyfriend was either going to propose to her or kill her. In 2005, 20-year-old Rhonda Casto's mother introduced her to a man that she thought would be a great fit for her daughter. And that man was Stephen Nichols. Stephen seemed great and nice. He was successful and also recently divorced. And when Stephen met Rhonda, he was instantly smitten because Rhonda was beautiful, she was a model, but she was also quite younger than him. Rhonda was 20 years old and Steve was in his 30s. And when the two started dating, things got really serious really fast. Steve would absolutely shower Rhonda in gifts. The two moved in together and eventually had a daughter together. Steve would say that the relationship was great, that Rhonda desperately wanted to marry him, that the two of them looked at rings already and planned to get married that summer. But those closest to Rhonda told a very different story. Rhonda's family and friends said that Rhonda was very unhappy and she was thinking of ending things with Stephen. She felt like she had no control over her life, that her relationship with Stephen was toxic. They were always fighting, and that Stephen had even become abusive. Rhonda even took a photo to show her loved ones of all the bruises down her back from Stephen pushing her down the stairs. On March 16th, 2009, Rhonda and Steve's young daughter was with Rhonda's mom because the couple planned on going on a hike. It was a hike in this very beautiful area of Oregon called Eagle Creek. But before they left, Rhonda told her mom that on that hike, Steve was either going to propose to her or he was going to kill her. Like I said, the place that they were going to go on this hike was very beautiful, but it was also quite dangerous. The trails were very narrow and they were right next to very steep, high cliffs. During the hike, Steve said that it started to rain, so he suggested that him and Rhonda go back, but that Rhonda started acting really weird. That Rhonda draped a towel around her shoulders and started running around screaming that she was Superwoman. Rhonda was just running around screaming that she's Superwoman, but she's running so fast on these narrow trails and it started to get wet from the rain, and Rhonda slipped and fell off the 100-foot cliff. Stephen claimed that he hiked all the way down to where Rhonda's body was, and then he spent about an hour trying to give her CPR until he realized that it was no use, that she was gone, and then he fell asleep on her body. When he woke up, he hiked all the way back to his car, and only then did Stephen attempt to call 911.
Hello, I need help. I'm at Eagle Creek.
Okay, and what's going on there?
My girlfriend fell off the cliff and I hiked back. I'm in my car.
You're at the Eagle Creek trailhead right now?
Yeah.
When police arrived, there were a lot of immediate red flags. Stephen was showing no emotion, and he was only concerned with how cold he was. He was being completely uncooperative with police that were trying to find Rhonda's body, and he would only talk about how cold he was and that he thought that he had hypothermia, which he did not. Police eventually did find Rhonda's body, and she was tragically dead at only 23 years old, and it became suspiciously clear that no one had hiked down to her body before the police got there. Steve never went down to her body, and he never attempted to give her CPR. He lied about absolutely everything. And Rhonda's family immediately started pointing fingers at Stephen, believing that he pushed Rhonda off that cliff. And only 10 days after Rhonda passed away, Stephen tried to get his hands on her life insurance policy. The two weren't even married, and only a few weeks before Rhonda died, Steve took out a $1 million life insurance policy on Rhonda. So suspicious. What 23-year-old has a $1 million life insurance policy? The police start looking into Steven's background and they find out that his ex-wife filed like a bunch of police reports against him for domestic violence, including one count where Steven's ex-wife claims that Steven tried to push her off their apartment balcony. So you have Rhonda, who says that Steve pushed her down a flight of stairs. You have his ex-wife, who says that Steve tried to push her off their apartment balcony. It's seeming more and more likely that Steve is the exact kind of guy that would push someone off of a cliff. Then Rhonda's mom came forward with some information that shocked everyone. Rhonda's mother said that Rhonda's younger sister, before any of this happened, before Rhonda passed away, told her that she had been sleeping with Steven. And this would have happened when Rhonda's younger sister was 15 years old and Rhonda's boyfriend Steve was 34. And Rhonda's mother actually said that at first she didn't believe her younger daughter. She thought that her younger daughter was making this up to try and like break up Rhonda and Steven out of jealousy. And she only came forward with this information after Rhonda died. Which is so crazy because I could never imagine not believing my daughter if she said that something happened to her. But even crazier, Steven didn't even try to deny it. Steven confessed that he had been sleeping with his girlfriend and the mother of his child's underage sister. Sadly, years would go by and this case would go cold because there just wasn't concrete evidence to prove that Steven was guilty. But of course, everyone thought that he was guilty, especially Rhonda's loved ones. And to escape the scrutiny, Steve moved to China with him and Rhonda's daughter. He also refused to allow anyone from Rhonda's family to see her very young daughter. And I'm shocked he even was allowed to have custody of her at this time, because this is after he admitted to statutory SA. In 2014, Rhonda's case was reopened and they actually tricked Steven to come back to America with his daughter because they were going to try and arrest him. They just couldn't let this case go cold forever and they were going to try and get Rhonda justice. And they charged him with first-degree murder and statutory SA charges. The prosecution actually did multiple tests with like dummies that were the same weight and height as Rhonda and took it to that cliff and like pushed it off or like had it fall off and determined that Rhonda had to have been pushed and pushed hard off of that cliff for her body to have been found where it was. But sadly, this was not enough to sway the judge, and the judge determined that there just wasn't enough evidence to find Steven guilty, and they suggested that the prosecution offer Steven a plea deal. Steven pled guilty to lesser charges of negligent homicide and third-degree SA charges. He is a registered SA offender, but he only received 14 months in prison as a sentence. But at this point, he had already served time awaiting trial, so Steven was released on time served. Steve's parental rights of him and Rhonda's daughter were terminated, and Rhonda's daughter will get her life insurance policy when she turns 18. But this case is very sad, very controversial, because a majority of people do believe that Steve got away with the murder of 23-year-old Rhonda Casto. I'm definitely interested to get your guys' opinions on this case, even though I'm pretty sure I know which way they're gonna lie. But definitely leave me all your thoughts, theories in the comment section. Until then, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time.